So Elon, if you could get up and explain where you are, how you're doing, and how much we're cutting, and it's an honor to have you. He's been a tremendously successful guy. He's really working so hard, and he's got businesses to run. And in many ways, they say, "How do you do this?" And you know, he's sacrificing a lot and getting a lot of praise, I'll tell you. But he's also getting hit, and we would expect that, and that's the way it works. So I'd like to have Elon Musk please say a few words.
Well,
Thank you, Elon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually just call myself a humble tech support here because this is actually, as crazy as it sounds, that is almost a literal description of the work that the DOGE team is doing, is helping fix the government computer systems. Many of these systems are extremely old. They don't communicate. There are a lot of mistakes in the systems. The software doesn't work. So we are actually tech support. It's ironic, but it's true. The overall goal here with the DOGE team is to help address the enormous deficit. We simply cannot sustain as a country $2 trillion deficits. The interest rates, just the interest on the national debt, now exceeds the Defense Department spending. We spend a lot on the Defense Department, but we're spending like over $1 trillion on interest. If this continues, the country will become de facto bankrupt. It's not an optional thing, it is an essential thing. That's the reason I'm here. And taking a lot of flack, and getting a lot of death threats, by the way. I mean, I like to stack them up, you know. But if we don't do this, America will go bankrupt. That's why it has to be done. And I'm confident at this point, knock on wood, you know, knock on my wooden head, there's got a lot of wood up there, that we can actually find $1 trillion in savings. That would be roughly 15% of the $7 trillion budget. And obviously that can only be done with the support of everyone in this room. And I'd like to thank everyone for your support. Thank you very much. This can only be done with your support. So it's really, DOGE is a support function for the President and for the agencies and departments to help achieve those savings and to effectively find 15% in reduction in fraud and waste. And we bring the receipts. So people say, like, well, is this real? Just go to doge.gov. We line item by line item, we specify each item. So, and I should say, we will make mistakes. We won't be perfect, but when we make a mistake, we'll fix it very quickly. So, for example, with USAID, one of the things we accidentally canceled very briefly was Ebola prevention. I think we all want Ebola prevention. So we restored the Ebola prevention immediately, and there was no interruption. But we do need to move quickly if we're to achieve a $1 trillion deficit reduction in financial year 2026. It requires saving $4 billion per day, every day, from now through the end of September. But we can do it, and we will do it. Thank you.
Would you have any questions of Elon while we're on the subject of those? Because we'll finish off with that. And if you would have any questions, please ask. You could ask me or Elon. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Musk. I just wanted to ask you that President Trump put out a Truth Social today saying that everybody in the cabinet was happy with you. I just wondered if you had heard otherwise, and if you had heard anything about members of the cabinet who weren't happy with the way things were going, and if so, what are you doing to address those any dissatisfaction?
Hey, Elon, let the cabinet speak just for a second. Is anybody unhappy with Elon? If you are, we'll throw him out of here. Is anybody unhappy? They have a lot of respect for Elon and that he's doing this, and some disagree a little bit, but I will tell you, for the most part, I think everyone's not only happy, they're thrilled. So go ahead, Elon.
I'm grateful.
And President Trump has put together, I think, the best cabinet ever. Literally. So, and I do not give false praise. This is an incredible group of people. I don't think that such a talented team has actually ever been assembled. I think it's literally the best cabinet that the country has ever had, and I think the company should be incredibly appreciative of the people in this room.
Mr.
Go
Musk.
ahead, please. Yeah.
Mr. President, thank you, Mr. Musk. Are there about half of the government employees so far appear to have responded to your request for what they've been doing over the past week? Is there a timeline in place for next moves for people being fired, and when can people expect to see results of that?
Yes. Well, to be clear, I think that email perhaps was misinterpreted as a performance review, but actually it was a pulse check review. Do you have a pulse? Do you have a pulse and 2 neurons? So if you have a pulse and 2 neurons, you can reply to an email. This is, I think not a high bar, is what I'm saying. This is, anyone can accomplish this. But what we are trying to get to the bottom of is we think there are a number of people on the government payroll who are dead, which is probably why they can't respond. And some people who are not real people, like they're literally fictional individuals that are collecting paychecks. Well, somebody's collecting paychecks on a fictional individual. So we're just literally trying to figure out, are these people real? Are they alive? And can they write an email? Which I think is a reasonable expectation for the American public would have at least that expectation of someone in the public sector.
Mr. Musk, roughly 1 million employees.
It's not a high bar, guys, come on.
Roughly 1 million employees have responded so far to this email. Does that mean that the remaining 1 million or so federal employees now risk being terminated? And is it your understanding and expectation when you post a directive on X that the cabinet secretaries will follow that order? Because several agencies have instructed employees that this is voluntary or not to respond.
Yeah, well, I guess it was like last week, the president encouraged me via Truth Social and also via a phone call to be more aggressive. And I was like, okay, yes, sir, Mr. President, we will indeed do that. The president is the commander-in-chief. I do what the president asks. And I said, can we send out an email to everyone just saying, what did you get done last week? And the president said yes, so it did that. We got a partial response. We're going to send another email. But our goal is not to be capricious or unfair. We want to give people every opportunity to send an email. And the email could simply be, what I'm working on is too sensitive or classified to describe. Like literally just, that would be sufficient. I think this is just common sense.
And what is your target number for how many workers, employees you're looking to cut total?
We wish to keep everyone who is doing a job that is essential and doing that job well. But if the job is not essential or they're not doing the job well, they obviously should not be on the public payroll.
I'd like to add, wait. I'd like to add that those million people that haven't responded, though, Elon, they are on the bubble. I wouldn't say that we're thrilled about it. They haven't responded. Now, maybe they don't exist. Maybe we're paying people that don't exist. Don't forget, we just got here. This group just got here. But those people are on the bubble, as they say. Maybe they're going to be gone. Maybe they're not around. Maybe they have other jobs. Maybe they moved and they're not where they're supposed to be. A lot of things could have happened. I wouldn't say that Biden ran a very tight administration. They spent money like nobody's ever spent money before, wasted money. The Green New scam, all of the different things they spent money on. And you've seen that. We've seen that with some of the things that I read in speeches. I read them and people can't believe when I read them. 20 million here, 30 million here for, a little educational course on something. Circumcision, right? Circumcision. $20 million to inform the people of such and such a country on other things and other things other than that. So, those people are, right now we're trying to find out who those people are that haven't responded. Now, there'll be some agencies, like Marco has people within state that are right now doing very classified, very confidential work, and we understand that, and we've talked, and, we're being a little more surgical. And Marco's doing a lot of things himself. And some of the secretaries we're going to be going to them. We're going to be talking about it today. We're going to ask them to do their own DOGE. In other words, they'll look in their group and I spoke with Lee Zeldin, and he thinks he's going to be cutting 65 or so % of the people from environmental. And we're going to speed up the process, too, at the same time. You had a lot of people that weren't doing their job. They were just obstructionists, and a lot of people that didn't exist, I guess, Lee, too. You found a lot of empty spots that the people weren't there. They didn't exist. I think education is going to be one of those. You go around Washington, you see all these buildings for the Department of Education. We want to move education back to the states where it belongs. Iowa should have education. Indiana should run their own education. You're going to see education go way up. Right now, we're ranked at the very bottom of the list, but we're at the top of the list in one thing: the cost per pupil. We spend more money per pupil than any other country in the world, and yet it's Denmark and Norway, Sweden, and I hate to say this, and you know, we're going to get along very well with China, but it's a competitor. They're at the top of the list. They're among the top 10 usually, and they're a very big country, so we can't use that as an excuse, right? Because we're a very big country too, but we were ranked last time under Biden. We were ranked 40 out of 40. They do the 40 certain nations that they've done for a long time. It seems to be 40 for whatever reason, and we were ranked number 40. A year ago we were 38, then we were 39. We hit 40. And so we're last in that, and we're first in cost per pupil. So I would say that's unacceptable.
President Trump and his cabinet taking questions on a wide range of issues, making news on everything from tariffs to peace, possibly in Ukraine, from egg prices to immigration. And we are covering it all this hour.
Boy, are we. Starting with senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy. He's live on the North Lawn. What an exciting midday for all of us, Peter. So DOGE was certainly a big focus there.
Yes, and Sandra, just to follow up quickly on what John was just talking about, he said that he's been in cabinet meetings that lasted, or where he was allowed to be in there about 45 minutes. I've been in some cabinet meetings during the last administration where we were allowed to stay in there for about 2 minutes. And so this one was a lot different. And we saw something that you don't normally see at any cabinet meeting, which would be applause, as the cabinet secretaries that have already been confirmed actually applauded the two guys that are trying to cut spending at their agencies.
Anybody unhappy with Elon? If you are, we'll throw him out of here. Is anybody unhappy? I have a lot of respect for Elon and that he's doing this, and some disagree a little bit, but I will tell you, for the most part, I think everyone's not only happy, they're thrilled.
President Trump blessed the effort to get 5 bullet points from every federal employee, claiming the main purpose is to find out if people on the federal rolls actually exist. Musk simplified the exercise as a pulse check or a performance review, and he claims that the effort to cut has meant multiple new threats on his life.
Taking a lot of flack and getting a lot of death threats, by the way. I mean, like, stuck him up, you know. But if we don't do this, America will go bankrupt. That's why it has to be done. And I'm confident at this point, knock on wood, you know, knock on my wooden head, there's got a lot of wood up there, that we can actually find $1 trillion in savings.
And Musk said in this cabinet meeting with the whole cabinet listening that to reach their goal of about $100 trillion in cuts, they need to cut $4 billion a day, every day from now until September. He says they're going to do it. Sandra?
Okay, Peter Doocy live at the White House for us. Peter, thank you.
So President Trump's first cabinet meeting will take place today, and Elon Musk is expected to be there. Joining us right now, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you.
You've been making a lot of news at these briefings. This is the first cabinet meeting. Elon Musk is going to be there. I know there's been a lot of talk about the emails asking about the productivity. Is he going to be asking the cabinet members for an update today?
Well, first of all, we're so excited that President Trump is hosting his first cabinet meeting here at the White House with the phenomenal team that he has put together. Every single one of his cabinet heads will be here today, both confirmed and soon to be confirmed. And Elon Musk will be in attendance at the cabinet meeting as well, because DOGE is working alongside every single one of these cabinet secretaries to identify waste, fraud, and abuse at their respective agencies. University. So they will be providing updates on some of the waste and fraud that they found, and they'll also be talking about their initiatives and the policies that they are enacting across the federal government to deliver on the promises President Trump made to the American people.
From my view, it looks like the cabinet secretaries are already working with Elon Musk when it comes to cutting waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yes.
Some of the reporting was coming out saying that the cabinet members did not want to comply with the latest email that he sent out. But we're hearing it was because of national security reasons?
Well, first of all of the reporting that says there's chaos or there isn't team unity is based on anonymous sources.
Exactly.
If you talk to these cabinet secretaries, which you and many other reporters in that room today will have the opportunity to do, you will see that this is a unified effort and everybody is on board with President Trump's promise to identify this waste and fraud. You look at what Lee Zeldin has found at the EPA, $20 billion that the Democrats pushed out the door in the final weeks of Joe Biden's presidency. $2 billion of that went to an NGO that was run by Stacey Abrams. So there is real fraud taking place in our federal government. Or look at what Kelly Loeffler has done at SBA. She demanded that the workforce return to the office. 80% of SBA employees are back in the office because of her leadership and her efforts, and she put out a phenomenal video to talk about it. You look across the board, all of these cabinet secretaries are working alongside Elon and, of course, the president at his directive to make our federal government more efficient.
So, Caroline, let's talk about some of the other breaking news. I know the president, as well as the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, were going back and forth. The president wants a deal to be done. We're hearing news that Zelensky could be at the White House to sign some deal. What can you share with us?
Well, what I can share is what the president has said, which is the critical minerals, rare earths deal is absolutely necessary and pivotal. It will recoup American tax dollars. We've funded more than $300 billion to Ukraine's national defense. It will provide these very critical minerals and rare earth minerals to the United States of America for our own national security. It will also create an incredible economic partnership between the American people and the Ukrainian people who are going to need to rebuild their country after this brutal war once it ends. So this is a significant step towards peace. We expect the deal to be signed this week. And as President Trump said yesterday, if Zelensky wants to come to this White House to sign that deal, he is open to that.
Do you think he's going to come to show up to sign some sort of deal?
We hope that he will, as President Trump said.
Tell me the latest about the meeting with Putin. Is that a go just yet?
There's nothing on the books just yet. The president will continue to keep everybody informed on that. But I know that Steve Witkoff and Secretary Rubio and our National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and the president's entire delegation who he's tasked with ending this conflict continue to be engaged with the Russians as well as the Ukrainians. You have to talk to both sides to bring the war to an end. The president had direct dialogue with Putin, and he has said that he believes both sides of this war want to see it end. It's in the interest of both of these countries to stop the killing and to ensure that we can have a peaceful world and economic prosperity for all.
So, Caroline, you made some headlines yesterday. I know the president, he talks to all type of media, even
does.
some of the people that don't even like him. He's willing to give them interviews, gives them the first scoop sometimes.
That's right.
Yesterday, you announced that the White House press office would be, and the president would be selecting the pool reporters going forward. What is that process going to look like going forward?
So for your audience who may not understand what has happened at this White House for decades, you have a group of journalists based here in Washington, D.C., who dictate which reporters go into the most intimate spaces of the American presidency, the Oval Office, who gets to ride on Air Force One. And that system hasn't changed since the early 1900s. Obviously, the media today in 2025 looks a heck of a lot different than it did when the White House Correspondents Association was formed. So this is a long overdue change. A lot of press secretaries and White Houses have talked about making this change. We are just the first to do it. We're shaking up Washington in more ways than one. And so moving forward, we're going to expand the pool's access to the president, to non-traditional journalists. Legacy media will still have a seat, just like they still have a seat in our briefing room, but we're going to bring new voices into the fold. The only people who are upset about this are those who feel like it's a knock on their power that they've had over the system. The power belongs to the people, not elitist journalists in Washington, D.C.
Is the president doing this because of all the podcasts that were so instrumental in the YouTube shows that were instrumental during his last election win?
Well, we've made a lot of changes to the press operation here because of that successful effort. The president owned the non-traditional media lane. Those podcasts were some of the most successful ratings bonanza that those podcast hosts have ever seen when Donald Trump joined their shows. And so we want to continue that effort because that's how you reach a bulk of America today. They're not tuning in to the legacy media outlets. They are listening to their podcasts when they drive to work. They are reading non-traditional outlets and digital sites. And so those voices deserve a seat at the table. And that's what we're trying to do here.
Caroline Levitt here at the White House. I look forward to seeing you later on in the cabinet room.
We'll see you there.
In the Oval to interview the president as well as the rest of the cabinet.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Caroline.
Thanks for being
we
here,
appreciate it.
Lawrence.
Congratulations
Thank
once
you.
again.
Joining me now is our great panel, Ari Fleischer, former White House press secretary and Fox News contributor, Lisa Booth, Fox News political analyst and host of The Truth with Lisa Booth, and Kevin Walling, former Biden 2020 campaign surrogate and vice president at HG Creative. Thanks, guys. Great to have all of you here. So, Ari, let me start with this. This is a Trump invention, basically, because prior to the first term, we were not privy to these cabinet meetings, and he started doing this in the first term. There was a little bit of a tape delay last time around. What do you think about this? What stood out to you?
Well, this was not a cabinet meeting. This was a news conference with the cabinet invited to watch it
And participate.
Maybe after they right. Maybe after they shooed the press out after an hour, it turned into a cabinet meeting and they talked about other things. But it's remarkable. The press has absolutely zero, nothing to complain about in this country. What kind of access are they getting to the President of the United States? This is unheard of. You know, in the Bush years, we had many cabinet meetings. I sat in on all of them. The press would come in, ask 2, 3, 4 questions, and then my staff's job was to shoo them out of the room so we could begin the cabinet meeting. This was a remarkable news conference.
It was. And Lisa Booth, it started in a remarkable way, especially given the Pew study that came out today, which showed that there's actually a resurgence of prayer and religion in this country. Lisa, let's play this. You picked this as the important moment here. Let's watch.
Father, thank you for giving us this opportunity to restore faith in this country and be a blessing to the people of America.
Lisa, your thoughts?
Yeah, I felt this was important because what does this president get called? He gets called a king, a tyrant, a dictator. And you look at the bulk of the conversation that took place today, what was it about? It was about returning the power in the hands of the American people, about reducing the federal workforce, about saving taxpayer money, about even, putting the Department of Education back in the hands of states. So if he's a dictator, he is really bad about it. He's a really terrible dictator here. But that's what this past election was about. And that's what this administration is about wrestling the power back from the bureaucratic state and delivering it and returning it to the hands of the American people. That's what he's been doing with this. And you look at going back into 1789, we had 3 federal agencies. Now we have 400. You've got something like 2.4 million federal workers. Does anyone, Martha, watching believe that as the government has grown, it's become more accountable and more in touch with the American people? Yeah. So that's what Trump is about the we the people president returning the power to us.
I equate this email, this 5-point email, to the CAPTCHA thing that you have to do. Are there bridges? Show the pictures that have bridges. Prove you're a human being. It's not really that tough. It's truly not really that offensive. Kevin. And Kevin, let me bring you in here. I actually want to play something about Medicaid because a lot of Democrats have been, warning people that their Medicare and Medicaid programs are about to get slashed and burned. Let's listen to what the president said on this.
Can you guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times, you shouldn't be asking me that question. Okay? This will not be read my lips. There won't be read my lips anymore. We're not going to touch it. Now, we are going to look for fraud. I'm sure you're okay with that.
So, Kevin, what do you say to that?
Well, listen, you had the president out there saying that. He campaigned on no cuts to Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security, but you also have a Congress that passed a bill that calls for $880 billion in cuts under the jurisdiction of the Energy and Commerce Committee. 86% of our federal spending goes directly to Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and defense spending. So
well, you know that the Republicans who passed that bill last night say that is an error, that's a talking point, that is not accurate. And I think there's a very
well, it's written
significant
into the
difference
legislation
here.
that they passed that's under the purview of
well,
the
it
Energy
hasn't
and
passed
Commerce
anywhere
Committee.
yet. It hasn't. It has to go to the Senate now, and there's a lot of negotiation that will go on before this becomes a bill. But I think that what the president said there, Kevin, is really important. And once anyone discusses looking at Medicare and Medicaid for fraud, it immediately gets translated, most often by Democrats, I must say, but sometimes by some Republicans, as they want to cut Medicare and Medicaid. But do you back a proposal to open up Medicare and Medicaid? Let's find out who's getting these checks, because there is an enormous amount of inaccurate bills and checks that are going out from this agency. Do you have any problem with that?
Absolutely. This Democrat's all about, tackling waste, fraud, and abuse in the system, and it supports aspects of what DOGE is trying to do. That's why I was supportive of Hakeem Jeffries appointing Democratic members in the House to that DOGE subcommittee to have a seat at the table in those conversations. Now we also have to fact check what DOGE is putting out there, saying, there's 150-year-olds receiving checks from Social Security and Medicare and things like that are out there. But I'm all about tackling waste, fraud, and abuse. I just want to make sure and ensure that none of these cuts really affect the 41 million children, for example, that are on Medicaid, the rural health care, many of whom are Trump voters that supported the president, that they don't see cuts to rural health care.
I don't think he really could be more clear on this. All right, final thought from you, because obviously you cannot make the kinds of cuts that Elon Musk talked about, which are tremendous. He said you have to cut $4 billion every day in order to meet their goal. You can't do it without getting into Medicare, Medicaid, the programs, and at least looking for fraud.
Yeah, during the campaign, the president said he wouldn't touch Social Security and Medicare, the program for the elderly. Now, he has added, it seems, Medicaid to it, which to me puts the president on thin ice. I don't know how they're going to do what they want to do on Capitol Hill if they can't make reforms to Medicaid. If they're required to lock in all the surge of people who got put onto Medicaid by the Biden administration post-COVID, these people need to come off. They shouldn't be on Medicaid for life. So Medicaid needs to be touched. It needs to be touched the right way. But they can't do their job without doing that.
I mean, I think that could go into the waste category. I think there's a category that they can look at that under and say this person is not a, it shouldn't be a recipient in this program. And I think that's what happens when you open the books. But even opening the books on this issue will have a ton of ads being made, and they're being made already, saying that Republicans are cutting Medicare and Medicaid. Thank you, you guys. We got to leave it there. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Martha.
Good to have you.
All right, as Democrats continue to resist DOGE, we're learning that some of these protests aren't as organic as some media claim. Reports indicating that left-wing organizers with funding ties to George Soros are fueling these protests in red states to target House Republicans. Joining us now is host of Fox Business is Making Money with Charles Payne. Charles, anything about that shock you?
No. I mean, it's so inorganic, and then it's what's really, I think, maybe the whole ironic part about it, even with the backing of a multi-billionaire like Soros, they don't even feel strong or real. If you're going to spend money, get a whole bunch of actors out there, right? They can't spark any real true outrage out of all of this, and in part because I think a lot of people, whether you're Democrat, independent, apolitical, you start to see these stories, and it's just the egregiousness of it, the outright theft of it all, the righteous self-indignation of the folks who say the pearl clutching. I think people are not buying it. I will say what they have had some success is the media with the tariff scaring and the DOGE scaring, with consumer sentiment and confidence and things like that. But that's a sentiment gauge. Like, okay, things might get bad because every day in the news they say it will, but I'm still doing okay. So but as far as like DOGE itself and the mission that it's on, I think the vast majority of Americans applaud it.
Speaking of DOGE, here was Elon Musk in that cabinet meeting, stood up and said this, defending it. Listen.
Cannot sustain as a country a $2 trillion deficit. It's not an optional thing. It is an essential thing. That's the reason I'm here, and taking a lot of flack and getting a lot of death threats. By the way, I mean I'd like to stack them up, But if we don't do this, America will go bankrupt, and obviously that can only be done with the support of everyone in this room.
And also on the confusion over the email that was sent to federal employees to name 5 things you did in the last week, he seemed to want to clarify that as well. Listen.
I think that email perhaps was misinterpreted as a performance review, but actually it was a pulse check review. Do you have a pulse? Do you have a pulse and 2 neurons? So if you have a pulse and 2 neurons, you can reply to an email. This is, I think not a high bar. Literally try to figure out, are these people real? Are they alive? And can they write an email? Which I think is a reasonable expectation.
Interesting moment considering some in that room, like the Defense Department, Pete Hegseth, they had put out an email saying that we have our own evaluations and saying there was not need to respond directly to that. But where does that leave things? Was it a pulse check?
In part, it is a pulse check, it's another one of these things where common sense prevails, right? We've all walked in government buildings, whether they're state, local, or federal, and we've wondered the same thing. And we see the person, but we're not sure if they're like, do you have are you hello? It's a necessary process, and maybe miscommunication. You can see where Musk didn't want to step on any toes per se, but he was also pretty serious about what he's taken in terms of damage to his business. For instance, Tesla's stock. I think a lot of people are saying, hey, I'm going to turn my Tesla in. I'm not going to buy one this time. He's taking a pretty heavy financial hit. And of course, anytime people threaten your life or the lives of your family, it's a hell of a sacrifice at this point that he's making, in my opinion.
What did you think of Howard Lutnick in the room addressing the deficit? And he proposed this gold card situation to pay down the debt. I'll get your reaction to this. Listen.
These companies can go and buy a gold card, and they can use it as a matter of recruitment. At the same time, the company is using that money to pay down debt. We're going to pay down a lot of debt with that.
200,000 of these gold green cards is $1 trillion to pay down our debt. And that's why the president is doing it.
So he says the queue is there's already 250,000, right? So this EB-5 program has been in place for a long time, and it's used a lot in places like New York City. That's why Lutnick probably is very, very familiar with it. But to really flesh it out and make it something, think about China. Think about how many billionaires and millionaires have tried to leave China in the last 10, 15 years. And China, and look at Vancouver, look at Toronto, look at these places where they go en masse. They've brought billions of dollars with them, billions of dollars. That money goes into local economies. It goes into starting businesses. If they want to come here anyway, why not charge them a fee? So if we can get to $1 trillion, that would be fantastic. I did reach for my calculator. That's all I'm saying. I didn't get a chance to use it because I had to come do this here, but I did reach for it.
It was a lofty goal.
Listen, the bottom line is we need to bring down the deficit, and they've got a lot of ideas, right? Instead of an administration saying it's impossible, live with it, they're shooting out ideas and saying we're going to do this, 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 and this, and this. And when we add it all up, we think we'll get to the target.
I think we both got the bold print and color memo today because we're just rocking these colors. Charles, always great stuff.
Same.
That cabinet meeting.
It was phenomenal.
It was really interesting.
By the way, everyone was so sharp. Everyone was so sharp. They knew everything. Robert Kennedy Jr., he knew the stats. Everyone knew everything that was asked.